Welcome to the Retirement Roadmap Show with your host, Dave Nagy. And in the studio, we have our co-host, Tony Shore. Tony, how's it going?
Yes, it's going great, David. I am so excited to be here. I love hanging out with you. You know that. I get excited anytime we talk. We always laugh and joke around. You make me feel good. We're
Because you're a
kindred.
good guy.
Well,
You
yeah, we're
should feel
kindred.
good.
And you're a good guy. We're kindred spirits. I
We
love
are.
this. And I love that you spend time to do the show each week to educate folks and give them tips on what they can do to improve their financial situation and what to do with their investments and retirement income and planning. It's huge. So that's a good thing. But I've been great. No complaints here. What have you
Good.
been up to?
Just working, playing golf.
Nice.
Yeah, well, depends. If you've ever seen my golf game, you may
Well,
not say that.
well, the weather's been okay for you there,
The
right?
weather has been beautiful in San
Yeah.
Diego. Yes, we're very, very lucky, very blessed.
Well, it's the best weather basically in the continental United States. I don't think it gets much better than San
No,
Diego,
I
Southern
don't think
Cal.
so.
I mean, it's sunny and 70 all the time. Once in a while, sunny and 80. So why
Yeah.
not? Right?
It's a tough life.
It's Tony spelled backwards. Why not? So I've
Why
got
not?
that going
Ooh,
for me,
I
which is
like
nice.
that. I
Yeah.
never even knew that.
Which is nice. Yeah. Yeah. See what we've got going on here?
Why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. David spelled backwards is divad, but
Divide.
Tony spelled backwards is why not?
Yeah, I
So
used to say that to all the girls I used to ask out in high school. Why not?
why not? Why not? Well, David, today we're going to talk about why most retirements fail.
Yeah.
And you like to add on, it's not what you think.
It's not what you think.
Huh. I would say most people probably think their retirement is going to fail because they run out of money. They didn't save enough. Is that? I mean, that's
Well,
got to be part of it.
that can be part of it, but for most people, it's
Tied to
that
the market because their
well,
401ks are in the market.
really it's more about behavior and how we react to the market.
That's the real
Um,
reason. Most people, though,
yeah.
I bet think their retirement's going to fail if the market drops or something. Right?
Well, and bad timing is the other big piece of it,
Sure.
right? So, if you took two people, had the exact same investments and the same average rate of return, same retirement date, but one ran out of money and the other one didn't. Why? It's not luck. It's not the market. It's decisions. It's the psychology of retirement.
Ah,
Because retirement, Tony, it's emotional. It's not mathematic.
it's like your golf game. It's all up here, right?
100%.
The difference, it's emotions and it's a mental game.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying. It's the psychology of it.
Well, and it's a transition, right? When you're working, I talk about this in my first book, the accumulation phase of life. You're working, you're saving, but now when you retire, you transition, and now you're in the distribution phase of life. And mentally, it's really hard to realize, that income is stopped. In my workshops, I always say you're permanently unemployed.
Permanently unemployed. I like that. I think people would look at how serious they get about retirement planning and doing it ahead of time. If you went to somebody, David, and you said, somebody who's in their working years, and you said, if you knew that at the end of the year, you were going to be let go, you were going to be fired or let go or laid off, and you wouldn't be able to have another job, you wouldn't be able to get another job for the next 20 years, would you change anything about the way you're spending or saving right now?
100%.
And every one of them would say, well, of course I would. If I knew I was going to be unemployed for 20 years, if I told you starting next week you're going to be unemployed for 20 years, would you change anything about what you're doing? Or even you knew you're going to be unemployed 20 years from now, starting in 1 year.
Yeah.
Would you do something, especially if you're in your 30s or 40s or even 50s? People would go, yeah, I would change the way I'm spending money. I would do things differently.
Yeah.
Well, that's what retirement is. It's
100%.
unemployment for 20 or 30 years,
for
right?
the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then once that paycheck stops, that's when the fear starts to increase, right?
Right.
They become loss aversion. It becomes dominant in their mind. And really, people panic at the worst time. People that wouldn't panic normally while they're working and they have income, then income's not there or something happens and they panic. And it's just human nature. And everyone says, well, I wouldn't do that. It wouldn't happen to me. Yeah, it does. And I've seen it over and over again.
Yeah.
So here's what happens. You retire, the market drops, you're pulling money out. Now you're locking in those losses. And the biggest risk in retirement isn't the volatility, it's how you react to the volatility.
Yeah, it is. It's how you react, and I think the key here, and of course, this is always the punchline of the whole bit, and that is if you're working with a trusted professional who's going to help you make the right financial choices and keep the emotions out of it, you need a third party who's removed from the emotional attachment.
100%.
And that's
100%.
I'm not going to name names, David Nagy, but I know a guy that could help you with that,
I
right?
know you know a guy.
Yeah.
Feel like I'm in a Tony Soprano movie. I know a guy.
Yeah, exactly. You know a guy.
Yeah.
So it's psychology. Loss aversion, people panic at the worst time. So where are we going here? What else do
Well,
we need to know
you and
about?
I have talked about the sequence of returns, and I do workshops every month. We do a couple of workshops, and there's usually 50 people in there, 40 people in the workshop, and I'll ask them, who here has heard of sequence of returns? And maybe one person will raise their hand. 99% of the crowd has never heard of it. They look at me like, what is he talking about? And, I always say, look, has anyone ever heard of average rate of return? And everyone's like, oh, yeah, I know average rate of return.
Sure.
Because Wall Street, that's all they talk about is average rate of return, right? And sequence of returns is how you earned that average return. So if you had an average rate of return over 20 years, you had some good years, some bad years, you add them all up, divide it by 20, that's your average rate of return. Well, if you have early losses and you're taking money out in retirement, so you retire and then the market pulls back, and maybe we have a 2020, 2021, 2022 where it's a slow pullback over 3 years, that's a dangerous combination. So
Yeah.
the same average return does not mean the same outcome. And most people look at me when I say this and they're like, what is he talking about?
Mhm.
So, to make it simple, you're person A, I'm person B. You retire, we both retired at the same time. We have the same
Yep.
amount of money. We get the same average rate of return over 20 years, but you lose money early on in retirement. You're going to struggle. And there's a good chance you are going to run out of money. Where I have gains early on, I'm going to have a good retirement. I'm probably not going to run out of money. Same average rate of return, just a different sequence in which we receive it. And it's not what you earn, it's when you earn it that can really derail and completely blow up your plans for retirement.
It's all timing is more important than the initial amount you start off with even.
Yeah.
It's when you're taking the money out, timing of when you need the money and where you're pulling it from, and that's where a financial advisor can help you have a plan that will help you avoid those pulling money out if there happens to be an early, like if 2022 was your first year you were in retirement, that would be tough because that was a down year, right?
Yeah.
The next 3 years were record highs. So you have to look at these things. You have to have money to get you through, depending on your time horizon. It's more about timing, like you say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why they run these Monte Carlo simulations where you literally just change that first year in retirement to a loss, and your plan goes from a 90% success rate down to a 30 because of 1 year. And it's not about returns. It's income. And I talk about this chapter 5 of my first book. I talk about it in my workshop. Doesn't matter if you have $5 million in the bank. Doesn't matter if you have $50 in the bank. For everybody, whether you're working, whether you're retired, the most important thing for everybody is having enough income to pay your bills month after month, year after year, until you are dead.
Gone from
Yeah.
deceased. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Until you're gone.
Until
right?
that time comes. You don't want your bank account to hit zero before your blood pressure does.
100%.
Right.
And that's one of the things that we see 90% of the time. Clients come in and their portfolios are not designed for income. And retirement isn't about growing it anymore. It's about income. It's about turning those assets into a paycheck month after month, year after year. And that's one of the biggest challenges retirees will have when they retire.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a huge challenge. And I think people often just look at it in terms of what returns they're going to get, not income. And I'm
Yep.
glad you explained what's called the sequence of returns because that does make a big difference. And you have plans to combat that and deal with it that you use. There's plenty of strategies based on individual timelines. There's not one size fits all solutions here
No.
that you use for people, right?
And that's, I think, what I love about what I do so much is, first of all, I just really enjoy helping people, and everybody's different. Everyone has a different situation. They all have a different amount of money that they need. Some people have pensions. Some people have income from property. Other people don't have pensions. There's so many different things. And then I talk about that in my first book, right? You want to have different buckets of money, and I talk about the color of your money.
Sure.
Like green bucket, that's safe money, income annuity, social security, pension. You know it's going to be there. It's safe. It's guaranteed. Then yellow, the yellow bucket, that's kind of moderate risk, buffered strategies, bonds, structured products. And then red money, right? The red bucket, that's growth. That's long term, later in life. Maybe we're going to use that for long term care, or maybe you're going to give it to your children. But it works. And why this works is that it protects people against that sequence of return risk. And it provides a psychological comfort when you know you've got money coming in month after month, year after year. No matter what happens in the market, it creates income stability and peace of mind. And I do this in my workshop. I tell everyone, I say, let's just for a moment pretend we're all retired. Now let's pretend that we're all going to get $10,000 a month net of taxes, and it's going to go up by 3% every year for cost of living increase. And I say, how does retirement feel right now to everybody? And they're all like, wow, that sounds great. I'm not worried anymore. Well, that's what it is to have a plan, to make sure that income is there. And they've done studies, Boston Economics. What's the other one? There's a couple other studies that have been done. And what they found is that people that have pensions or guaranteed income often live healthier, happier, longer lives in retirement because they're not constantly worried about that income.
Well, there you go. And that's why, again, the bucket approach, the color of money approach to balance out that risk and have different buckets to draw from at different times, that is how you're going to combat that sequence of returns risk in retirement that so many people just can't grasp. And it is derailed many a retirement. You've seen it happen.
Many times.
And if people don't come to you soon enough, but if you have a plan in place, the thing is, we all hope for the best, but you need to plan for the worst and have an extensive plan, right? And eliminate those emotional decisions. Stop making those. And again, that's where a trusted financial professional like yourself comes in. You and your team there, that's what you do. You help people with this and avoid
Yep.
that.
Well, and what we find is that most people don't actually have a written retirement plan. What they have is a collection of brokerage accounts and statements. That's not a retirement plan. That's a plan to fail. And so when you come into the office, and for those of you that would like a complimentary meeting with my team and I, call my office 619-460-9433. 619-460-9433. Go to our website, srswealthmanagement.com. You can schedule a meeting through the website. We'll sit down, we'll walk you through and show you exactly where you stand right now. My case design team will create a customized written plan for you and your family. And whether you decide to move forward and implement that through up, it's entirely up to you. There's never any pressure. We really just want to help educate and empower people. And for those of you that it's a good fit, we're happy to help. But a lot of people, they just think they're going to be fine. And they, like my grandmother, when my grandfather died, she had plenty of money, more money than she needed. But because of bad investments decision, bad timing, bad advice, she ran out of money.
Oh,
And it was horrible to see that. Now I was just a young kid, I was
Young
a
buck.
teenager. I didn't really know about this stuff, and it really is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about what I do. My father did the same thing. My father retired at 62, turned on Social Security right away. He
Hmm.
never thought he was going to live to be 80. He swore up and down, Dave, I'm never going to make it to 80. Well, he lived to be 93 years old.
Yeah. People are living longer and longer. Everybody
Yeah.
thinks, I'm not gonna be around that long. And that's just, yeah.
Well, and there's a term for it. It's actually called psychological distancing. And
Sure.
most people don't think that they're going to live to be 90, 95 years old, but the reality of it is about half of us are living that long now, and we're simply not planning.
Yeah. Yeah. Not planning, and not planning adequately for enough time. I mean, we see more and more people spending 30 years in retirement. I
Yeah.
mean, they're spending a good third, if not more, of their lives in retirement. So you have to have a plan. So what's the call to action here? What can our listeners out there do? What's their assignment right now?
Well, if you're within 5 or 10 years of retirement, or maybe you're already retired and you don't have a written income plan, that's the first place to start. Sit down with us. We'll walk you through it. We'll show you exactly where you stand and how it looks.
Yeah,
And we always under promise and over deliver. So, we use a rate of return we know we can achieve. So when we build a plan, we're using a 4.5, 5% average rate of return. We're
sure.
using a 2.5, 3% inflation rate. That way, when we build a plan, we know it's going to work.
Yeah. Well, and you want a plan that will work. So, um, let's now that we've discussed that, what's the biggest mistake people make right before retirement? What do our listeners and viewers need to be watching out for here?
I think the biggest mistake is that people retire and they still behave like an investor, not a retiree. They take far too much risk. They focus on accumulation and chasing returns. Um, and they don't flip that switch to retirement.
Hmm.
And really, Tony, retirement's not about how big of an account you have. It's about how reliable it can produce income.
Yeah, it's all about the income, isn't it? I
Y-
mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
100%.
I mean, you can have this big, chunky 401k, but how are you going to use it to create income? And then some
Yeah.
people might say, well, I'm just going to take out 4% a year out of it, and
Yeah.
then I'll be
Oh,
fine.
that's not a plan. That's a
No,
guess.
no, it's a
You
guess,
know,
and you're going to suffer sequence of returns. What if your first couple of years are down years in the
yeah.
market? So,
I see people all the time, they walk into retirement with millions, but no plan for how to turn it into income.
yeah, so
It's like,
most people don't have an actual income plan. That's the
no.
weakness.
And
That's the weak spot.
it's like having a gas tank full of fuel, but you don't have an engine.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it's simple. You really have to start transitioning from growth mode into an income mode.
Yeah, and that's huge, and a lot of people struggle with that. I mean, so many people nowadays are just, their whole retirement is wrapped up in a 401k or a 403b, a 457, a TSP, some type of employer sponsored retirement account. That's their retirement. Maybe they were smart and they have an IRA or a Roth. Well, what are they going to do with that lump sum? And how are they going to preserve that nest egg? And should it all be just left in the market?
Yeah.
And how is it is it being actively managed? So that brings up so many questions. So when we
Mhm.
wrap up the show today, let our listeners know how they can get that plan in place. How can they figure out what their situation is for income? Because you can't use a cookie cutter rule of thumb approach that your neighbor did or your coworker or your relative
No.
did. You need a plan that fits your personal goals, your personal time horizon. Everyone's situation is different, right?
Yeah, and when you come into the office, the first thing we're going to do is going to sit down and get to understand your current situation. What are you trying to accomplish? And what concerns you have?
Sure.
And we're going to go through everything. We take a very holistic approach. We need to look at what is the income plan? How much do you need? How is inflation and risk in the market going to affect it? What about taxes? You got to have a plan for taxes. It's probably the single biggest expense for retirees in retirement.
Sure.
You got to have a plan for transferring the wealth. You got to have a living trust. You've got to make sure that you've got a plan for long-term care. If
Yep.
you're a married couple, 65 years and older, there's a 92% chance one of you is going to need long-term care.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, active management. I meet so many people that have a 401k at 3 different employers that they used to work for. They're just still sitting there. That's a huge mistake. It's going to cost you a lot of money. When you come in, we're going to go through all that. Then in our second meeting, we call that our analysis meeting. So everything you share with us in the first meeting goes to our entire team. And then our case design team is then going to look over everything very carefully. And they're going to create a customized written retirement plan that we give everybody complimentary. There's no cost for it. And we're going to walk through Social Security, inflation, taxes, how much you need to take from the portfolio, where you're going to take it from, when it's going to start, how long it's going to last, what happens if the market goes sideways. So we build plans, and we want clients to know month by month, year after year, where's that paycheck coming from?
Yeah.
Because retirement should feel like a paycheck, not like you're constantly dipping into a bucket and hoping it doesn't run out.
Yeah, there you go. Well, great words of wisdom, David. So let our listeners know how they can set up that no charge, no obligation consultation with you and the team there.
Yeah, so just call the office 619-460-9433, 619-460-9433, or visit our website, srswealthmanagement.com. There's a ton of great information on the site. You can watch a video about me and my team, how we do things. And then for those of you that would like to schedule your complimentary meeting, just go right on there and put in your information, and we'll get you on the calendar.
All right. Well, thanks, David. Great show today. And listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in to the Retirement Roadmap Show with our host, David Nagy.
Have a great